guys, welcome back to Infinite Possibilities, the podcast where we explore the lives of amazing people, their choices, challenges and opportunities. And today I have a very special guest, Thanh. Hey Thanh, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for asking me to be here.
Nice. So Thanh, what's your sort of 1 minute introduction?
I'm 22 years old. I'm Vietnamese Australian, and I'm currently studying Masters of Speech Pathology at UQ.
Oh, very exciting. Yeah. So we really want to know how Thanh got to where he is today. So we're going to start right at the beginning. So tell me about your childhood. What kind of child were you like growing up?
I guess background, I do still currently live in a rural area. So I live on a farm. No animals though, but it's a vegetable farm. And then, I've just lived there my whole life. And then I studied at UQ, which is in the city. So I think definitely I changed a lot from there. But I guess as a child, actually I do kind of think about this quite often. And it's like, because now that I study speech pathology, which you work a lot with kids in pediatrics and stuff, they tell you about all the telltale signs of kids' development, right? So they're like, oh, kids who do this, maybe as a red flag, or kids who do this is a good sign. Yeah. So I've asked my parents quite recently about some of the things I did, and I didn't know, but apparently I did like to read a lot as a kid. I know for sure I definitely played a lot with my imagination. So like walking around, like imaginary play. Yeah. And then also drawing and stuff as well. So yeah, I think I was a pretty creative kid or proactive kid, because when I was younger, I did want to be an artist, or artist or an author. But obviously, as you grow up, other things come into play, and then I think different options become available. But yeah, I think that sums up kind of like the type of child I was, I'd say. Yeah,
that's cool. And do you have siblings?
Yes, I have one older sibling. Yes, he is an engineer.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
very,
cool.
Very different from me.
Yeah,
but he's a very I would say, I'm quite extroverted. I'm pretty extroverted,
very
but he's
extroverted.
but he's quite introverted. Classic engineer. Yeah, classic
cool.
engineer.
Yeah, but when you were younger, you were also very extroverted, or not really?
I think from from personal judgment, I wouldn't say I was, but then definitely by uni, I would say I was.
Yeah.
I think I could definitely pinpoint the mental shift where it's in uni I decide to be more extroverted. Yeah. But when I was younger, I definitely wouldn't say I'd go talk to anyone or anything. Definitely nowadays I'm much better at being extroverted.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because I was going to say, liked art, liked reading, played a lot of imagination by yourself. Yeah. Sounds like a very introverted lifestyle.
Yeah, I think I definitely did play on my own a lot. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And tell me about what it was like growing up on a vegetable farm.
Actually, pretty difficult. Well, there are many benefits though.
Free veggies, fresh veggies.
That's true. But actually, as a child, I was pretty unhealthy. Now I'm much healthier, and I do use the produce at home. But when I was younger, definitely not healthy. But I'd say, for example, I'm really good at waking up early nowadays. I'm definitely an early bird, which I think for our age group is quite rare, because I think most people work best at nighttime. Yeah, but I definitely, in the hours of 6 to 12 a.m. or 12 p.m., I work the best, for sure. Definitely in the morning. I always wake up at 6 or something, because when you're harvesting vegetables, you have to wake up at 4 or 5 or something. And that's when it's cool, right, at that time. And then also, I guess, it's hard to admit, because my parents say it and you don't want to admit it, but it's there is discipline. Yeah. And there is that kind of organization that you get from doing labor really early on. Yeah. But there is also many negative aspects. Technically, child labor is one of them. Yeah. But the other one is I have eczema and my skin is quite sensitive. Yeah. So doing hard labor, not hard labor is a bit harsh, but maybe doing
when the weather is really
when
bad.
the weather's bad, it's really bad. And also for example, you would use latex gloves, obviously.
Oh, yeah,
right? And I'm allergic to latex. Yeah. That's how I found that out. But there's many instances where, example, your skin has oils and stuff that you need to have on there to keep it protective. But when you're working with vegetables and washing stuff all the time, but then I can't use gloves because of latex. So definitely, for example, I have eczema on my hands now, which has started because of farm work. Not now, but it began then and it's persisted since. Or for example, like also weeds and stuff, like stinging nettles and stuff.
Yeah.
When you have eczema, 10 times
So
worse.
bad.
10 times worse because it might be itchy for you and then it swells or something. But if it's itchy for me, it like wounds the
Stays.
skin.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So definitely good and bad. But now I think my parents have chosen not to let me. Like obviously I have my own jobs and stuff now, but they don't expect me to work on the farm anymore, which is way better.
And your
But-
brother doesn't
No,
need to
he is,
cover up your share?
No, he is very introverted in the sense that he does not see the sunlight. Classic engineer,
But lives on the farm. That's pretty funny.
He does, yeah. It's strange. Like the whole farm is quite like the house is very old. It's actually a temple as well because my parents are really religious. They're Buddhist.
Oh, wow. So you guys live in a temple?
Yeah, it's actually a temple. So
Wow.
it's in the sense that because we don't live in like a country where Buddhism is like the main religion. Oh, I'm not
Yeah.
religious, by the way,
Yeah.
but like it's not the primary religion. I'd say that for people to find places to gather, it can just be people's houses.
Yeah.
And for mine, we do have a shrine and everything there. So on special occasions, most people come to my house to gather. I mean, it is a farm, so we do have the land as well. But yeah, like the whole house is quite like traditional, like shrine, and then like vegetables here, and then there's the one room that's super high tech, my brother's room, where like the lights turn on by clapping, and then like
Wow, that's sick.
and like voice control, and like two computers, like two desktops and stuff,
Yeah.
and then the rest of the house is like a farm. But his one single centralized room is extremely high tech, but
Yeah. That's
because
cool.
he's a computer engineer,
Okay,
so he's
that would
like
make sense.
yeah,
It's his
electrical and
profession.
computer, so it's his profession, and he does enjoy it, which is I think quite surprising considering like with my upbringing how he got into that direction considering all of like the surroundings.
Yeah.
But to be fair, my father was also an engineer as well.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
that helped. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. Tell me more about the vegetables. So, what vegetables you got there? That fresh produce?
I'm a bad son, so I don't really know. But
Tell
it
me
tends
what
to be
you
like,
know.
just seasonal vegetables, a lot of like Asian vegetables because we deliver
Yeah.
to Asian markets.
Yeah.
But
Bok choy, yeah.
not that one actually, more Vietnamese focused. So if you ever eaten phao before, like Vietnamese phao,
Yeah.
the herbs and stuff we all grow. So normally when we eat it too, we don't need to buy it.
Nice.
Not many classic Western vegetables like potatoes or carrots, but definitely stuff like parsley is really common because it grows year round and it's very profitable. And I'd say we also have, like, cause it's land, we have space for fruit, but the fruit's just for us because we don't make enough for a commercial amount.
Yeah. And what kind
So-
of fresh fruit do you have?
Right now, probably dragon fruit, watermelon, pineapple, passion fruit.
Oh, your friends
star
must
fruit.
love you.
Yeah, I do normally like because gestures are like if I'm tutoring, or if we have tons to give but not enough to sell.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good. Like fresh fruit, there is definitely one of the best benefits.
Yeah.
The vegetables is okay. It's okay. Like chives and stuff like that is nice, but fruits are really like a good gift and also like convenient to eat at home as well.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and then how do you sort of go and sell those vegetables? So do you go to like a big retailer like Woolies or?
I think. Well, my parents are getting a lot older nowadays, but before.
Who's gonna look after the farm then?
Well, actually, they still will.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, I'd say before, like, currently we still do a lot of markets, but before my dad also did to Brisbane markets, so then that would go to Woolworths and
Yeah.
such and such. But since they're getting older, they no longer do Brisbane markets because that's like a high demand, high demand. And so instead, we mainly just do local places like, do you know Inala?
Yeah.
It's a really common area for Vietnamese people.
Yes.
So definitely there, we like each of the markets there. So if you've eaten at one of those, it's probably our produce.
Wow.
And then also ones near our house as well, because that's convenient. But yeah, I mean, regarding like who would take over, definitely not me. Definitely not my brother, but it's
Speech
more like,
pathologist.
well, I would say that's actually one of the things that leads into some career choices for me as well.
Yeah.
My dad used to be an engineer, and my mother was his secretary before. That's not how they met. That's not how they met.
Okay.
Like they were choosing to start a business together, but then my dad, because our grandparents used to do farming, he wanted to do that, so he opted out to do this instead. So this is what they are doing, what they enjoy. So they don't really feel the need to retire. But the goal is, obviously pay off mortgage and everything, and then
Yeah.
eventually just run a farm at the level that it's comfortable and enough to live by.
Yeah.
And I think that really ties into their philosophy of like being Buddhist as well. Very like living off the land, don't take.
Self-sufficient.
Like I think it's admirable. I don't.
Yeah.
No, I get it, and it's admirable. I wouldn't follow it though, but it's in the sense that like they know their set amount. You know, like as in they
It's
make
so
this
simple,
much
such a
to
nice, simple life.
yeah, like pay off mortgage and then like pay off bills and food. But then, for example, because it's a farm, like lots of acreage. My mum also grows orchids, right? And it's obviously a nice environment for that. But then the money she gets from selling them, even though, you know, we could use it to buy new appliances or replace really old stuff in our house. Or like, you know, or like help it to pay mortgage more or something. Any money they make over a certain limit in a week, they just send to charity or something. Because it's like, oh, that's
so
exactly
beautiful.
how much they need. And look, I get it, I respect it. But sometimes I'm like, hey, our fridge works like half the time.
Yeah.
It would be nice. It would be nice to replace
Yeah.
it. But, you know, I respect it. Like, it's like definitely very like, that's why they feel they probably wouldn't need to retire. Like now they say, like also farming, the wage is like not great. The salary isn't amazing. And it's also really dependent on weather as well.
Sucks.
So, and I definitely get this aspect from my father, but he's really organized in the sense that, you know, even in those days, we have enough money to cover for that.
Yeah.
But it's like, what was I saying?
Enough to cover for that, your father.
Yeah, it's like right now maybe I get 3 to 4K a week. I would say is like the average wage. But then when they retire, like we make that much because we would need to pay off bills and stuff. But eventually they said they'd be happy just making like maybe 2K a week.
Yeah.
That's enough to just live. Once
Yeah.
like everything's paid off, they can just comfortably live at like that kind of range. And that's apparently not too much work, and they enjoy it. So like
It's a lifestyle. It's more than just a
yeah,
job.
it's more like so lifestyle, and I think that really also maybe it's jumping a bit ahead, but like I always normally talk to ask our friends about this, in which I'm like, which kind of pathway, like which kind of career mindset do you have? And it's not obviously a binary system, but I feel like sometimes people are very work now, you know, or suffer, I would say, or like, you know, like it's difficult and then retire later and enjoy, or have more emphasis on doing something that you like and then working till the end of your life.
The slow burn.
Yeah, and then for me, it's definitely the second one. And I would attribute that to my parents. I wouldn't say either is correct. I'd see the benefits of both. But definitely from my parents' mindset as someone, like they want to keep working like that, I'm the same. Like that's why what I do, I enjoy like the work I do. And then, I would also in another separate thing, I feel like having a function in society, I think it's called functionalism, is for me like that's important. So not having a function is the same as like not being there for me. So I feel like it's good to have
like a purpose,
something
kind
to
of?
do, a
Something-
purpose. Yeah. Otherwise, like it's a bit, you know.
It's so hollow. Your existence
Yeah, exactly.
is like, why am I alive?
Yeah, just to like retire and buy stuff. I think it's like, oh, I want to do something for, you know.
Yeah,
Like,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Can I ask, what kind of engineer was your dad before?
He was an electrical engineer as well. So he was doing, and from that he was going to start a security business. So, you know, like security
such a
systems
big
and stuff. And
change
that's
to
why
go.
my brother did electrical too. So that's how it links into that.
Yeah. Do you know much about their decision to quit everything and join the farm? Was it something to do with like, you know, we got 2 kids, we want to raise them in a nice environment?
Definitely, it's actually it's kind of interesting because I actually feel like most people probably wouldn't know that much about their parents' choices. But recently this year I moved out of my house.
You did?
I moved back though. It was quite a temporary situation. But then through that I got close to my parents by, you know, being away from them.
Yeah.
And I got to learn a lot about their mindset of like why they chose to do what they did. And it's in part like the thing is obviously the security thing would be a lot more money
Profitable.
and like but I think their philosophy was they weren't that religious at the time. This was just their personal philosophy. But it was like they really wanted to be there for us the whole time we were being raised. That's why like they work from home. And they said, you know, they could always be there for special events and stuff. And even though we lived in kind of a, like this is just reality, but even though we live in kind of like a rural area, public school is not great. It's pretty, like, if I had children, I'm not sending them to public school. Seriously. Unless it's like selective. You know what I mean? And it's not great. And I said that too, because when I graduated high school, I was like, when I went to uni, I was like, all these people who went to private school, their connections are so amazing. And like, they're so well integrated into this like
Society.
when I say well integrated, not as in like adapted well, but they know a lot of people. They have connections. Like if I wanted to do maybe business or law, I would have to build from the ground up. Like my parents don't know anyone.
Yeah.
Like that kind of sense. So I was not spiteful, but a bit like, oh, you guys should have, because I was gonna go to State High actually.
Yeah, you were? What happened?
It's too far, so I didn't go. Yeah, but one of my childhood friends also lived in the same area, and he did go to State High. But then I didn't go. But their thing was, and I was like, why would you leave me in a public school where there's so much risk of like doing drugs and like doing this and doing that? And then they were like, oh, but that's why we work from home, to make sure you don't do that, right? And I was like, it's really hard to admit, but I'm like, okay, technically that did work. Like, because they were there like, I wasn't left alone. Like, they were always like, do your homework. And to be fair though, I was quite high achiever, so I was very like,
you were
I was
smart.
in line with that kind of mental, but obviously that comes from them like pushing me from the start. But like, yeah, like it's hard to admit, like they technically what they did is right, even though like
you feel like
I don't want to admit it. Yeah, I don't want to admit it, but yeah. But even in the end, and it's kind of crazy because you know not everything does work out, but the pathway that my parents imagined for me definitely did work out quite well. Because my dad went to uni, so he was like, oh, when you get to uni, then you can have your social life. Right?
Ta-da, extrovert.
And then you know he was right in the end. So yeah, obviously that doesn't make them perfect. There's many other things, but like I guess that's their mindset of like wanting to choose like it's like a lifestyle choice, less than like about like the money or anything. I'd say.
Yeah. Wow, that is actually pretty like well thought through. Like how they planned.
That's just because it worked out in the end.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, not to say that, like, I do think that sometimes, like, oh, yeah, wow, like, people in our area, because there's many families in our situation, where, like, immigrant parents, and then, like, farmers as well, but their children end up in a much different pathway. There are many people I know that have similar situations to me, but they might, like, go into, not to say that any job is, like, more value than the other, but then I know my parents value higher education, and then both me and my brother went into higher education, whereas the others like went into like trades or retail as their permanent job. So I think like
I get you. It's easy to justify when it worked out fine.
Yeah. But to be fair, you know, it's back and forth. It's like, well, it worked out fine because they did that. So
yeah. Wow, that's interesting. Okay. So tell me more about when you were young. Did you enjoy being on the vegetable farm? No. You hated it?
When I was young, no. But looking back, I would say definitely because I wasn't like an active child, like as in not like physically. Because if I do too much physical activity, I would like my eczema would flare. But I definitely because I like to like play imaginary games. I would walk around a lot. But I realized I when I went to live in Sunnybank, like in the suburban area.
Whoa, congratulations. When was that? You didn't visit me.
Like started this year. When I went to visit, like when I lived in those areas, or nowadays when I'm in the city and stuff, there really isn't that much space. And like the fresh air, I'm like, oh, I do really miss it like back there. So, and like definitely that, it's kind of interesting, I think, how that imaginary play like developed later on into my life. But I think, now I'm like, I'm pretty glad I did have that because anytime I wanted, I can just walk outside. And like, it's like the park is next door. Right? So, not to say that suburbs don't have parks. But it is a random nice benefit, I'd say.
Yeah, that's cool. And am I allowed to ask, when did your eczema start flaring?
From birth.
From birth?
From the very start. It was pretty, like it's, congenital. But, you know, I've definitely learned to live with it, so. Yeah,
and then maybe some people, they don't really know what it's like living with eczema. Can you sort of like explain what it looks like from your side?
Oh, pretty horrible. Honestly, pretty horrible. Like, actually, so that temporary situation where I moved out and I moved back in, I would say 80% of that was because of eczema, actually. In the sense that moving out's really stressful, and then any kind of mental strain or stress definitely influences eczema. Like if I get stressed, I'll probably start scratching. Like now I don't have like this, none of mine is it's not biologically triggered. There's nothing that in my body that I'm eating or anything that's triggering my eczema. It's normally external sources like heat or maybe like, that's just because of sweat. But then stress is probably the biggest cause of it for me now. Like, And I think this year was the year it peaked. It's definitely gone down, but I had my first infection with eczema this year. Apparently, it's really common for other people with eczema. But I looked after my eczema fairly well, so I don't normally get that. But this year I had my first infection, and it was horrible. Like my hands, I couldn't like open or close them.
Yeah.
Like because like they don't heal. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? But definitely started this year when it was at its worst period. It's like no sleep. Like you
Oh,
can't
yeah.
sleep when you go to sleep. Like, and you can tell your body's homeostasis is completely thrown off. It's the normal balance is not there at all.
Yeah.
Like normal body functions don't work. It's just like your sweat isn't working properly. Like
Yeah.
your skin's not healing properly.
Yeah.
Like for example, I still have this habit now when I drive. I try to, but I sometimes hesitate to do over the shoulder check
Yeah.
because when I had my serious flare, my skin was too dry on my neck that it would really hurt to turn my head. Like now I'm trying to readjust to do that because that's safe driving.
Yeah.
Drive safely. But like even now I'm like, I realize I hesitate to turn too far back. Like you really should turn the full way, but I like
I get it.
just like side eye a little bit.
Yeah.
And like my parents definitely helped me a lot through that. Like
Yeah.
you can't, like honestly, if you need full body moisturizer, it's too hard to do for yourself. You really need a supportive family member to help you or something. And my mum would always help me, and my dad, like without question. Even my brother, we're not that close, but like they know, they understand.
Yeah.
But it is like being set on fire.
Yeah.
It is like, there are many times, it's not a super healthy thought, but there's many times where I'm like, it's really hard to experience this knowing that it's not a pain that everyone else has to experience. If that makes sense?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, I wish this pain upon others. It's more like,
Why
wow,
me?
yeah, exactly. Like that kind of really unhealthy thought. It's like, it's such a disadvantage and like that not that many people, actually nowadays quite a lot of people have it, but it really depends. But yeah, it's definitely a struggle. I would say it's made my mental stronger though.
Yeah.
Like definitely, there are times where I'm like, well, pain tolerance is higher, but these are kind of like small issues. Like the thing is, heat causes sweat, but so does exercise.
Yeah.
So definitely, I would say like I was obese as a kid. My childhood obesity definitely a side effect of having eczema because I couldn't exercise fully. The moment I would start scratching.
Yeah.
Even now, I still do. It's just I value the exercise enough that I push through it.
Yeah.
Or like I have like the mental fortitude like to not scratch or something. Like and even days like this is so difficult. So difficult. Yeah, like volleyball I always scratch.
Yeah.
Dance I always as well. So like definitely it's a struggle for sure. But yeah, it just sucks. I wouldn't say it makes me a better person. I would much prefer not to have it.
Yeah, probably makes you more compassionate.
But yeah, definitely in terms of a medical standpoint, I think definitely more considerate of like other people's conditions, I'd say. But yeah, it's not an amazing experience. Would not rate it.
Yeah, no. Is it
Yeah.
something that is like constant, like 8 hours or 24 hours? Would you say?
Really depends on the severity of the day. Sometimes it's never.
Oh, that's
Like sometimes
beautiful.
it's like not at all. But then
Yeah.
honestly, exercising will always trigger it. But that's like a maybe 2-hour period or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that.
Do you have any sort of tips for how to cope to the audience?
Honestly, moisturizer. Moisturizer definitely helps. But I think it's really mental training. It's really like I said, I'm no longer religious because, just of personal choices. But really taking the time to like for my parents, it's meditation. I would say that. And it's like really just isolating everything only to the point that you can focus on the pain. You know, that in the sense that's like when lots of things are going on, the itching is on the side is a natural instinct, so you just do it without thinking. But then when you like calm yourself down and it's the only thing that's happening to you, you can block out those thoughts, if that makes sense. Like because like if I'm getting stressed, like this study, like I can't focus, like I might just scratch. But then if you're calm, and then like if there's only one thing happening to you, you have more control to stop it, I would say. But I would say that it's really a different experience for everyone. Like even the people that have it a small amount, just by having it in a small amount, if it flares, the effects can be really negative. So like I know many friends who their skin is quite clear, but they have like seasonal eczema. But when they have it, like they can't
So
move their
bad.
face or hands or something
Yeah.
like. It really depends. It really depends, I'd say.
Yeah. And then just wondering, like, if you have like a friend with eczema, how do you sort of like better support them, or like, is there anything you
Yeah,
can?
we always bring moisturizer for each other. It's actually really great.
Any moisturizer
I have
will
a
do?
friend of mine who's Peter Doe. He also
yes.
has eczema too.
Yes.
And then when we see each other at uni, I'm like, hey, can I borrow some
moisturizer?
moisturizer? Like, and then, or he just asks me if I need it sometimes. And I'm like,
that's
oh yeah,
actually really
thanks.
sweet.
Actually, one of something, I don't know if you know Kezia, but it was a really sweet thing
vaguely.
that she did the other day. I realized like, oh, she is a close friend of mine. Is that like, I was at uni. I wasn't particularly having a flare or anything. I think I was like scratching a bit. But she's like, oh, do you need moisturizer? And I'm like, oh yeah, thanks. Because sometimes I just think people bring moisturizer in general. And I was like, oh, why do you always have it? And she's like, oh, I bring it for you. And I thought that was really nice.
sweet.
That's really nice to have. But yeah, I think that's the easiest temporary like solve. Like it helps you, it reduces the pain, like a painkiller, I'd say. It doesn't solve the problem, but actually in speaking that, I guess, I went to the hospital about it. And then, see, I think I'm fine. But they saw it and then they were like, 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 this is like really bad. And I was like, oh, really? I thought this was like okay. And they're like, oh, modern medicine has definitely advanced very far since back then. Like, they're like, you pretty much don't have to live with eczema anymore.
Oh,
Like,
hello.
so,
That's really exciting.
Naturally, though, keeping in mind, dermatology clinics are very busy. Like, getting yourself on that, unless you go through some infection and become really high priority for treatment, you don't get it instantly. But it takes quite, because so many people have it. But nowadays, eczema treatment is pretty advanced now. So they say like the hospitals say you really don't need to like suffer this much with it anymore. But for me, it's something I also learned in speech. It's like ICF, like an International Classification of Functioning. The impact of eczema on my life now is not so bad that I need to get really intensive treatment. So definitely I think there's a time that it could become that and I might want to get that. But right now it doesn't affect functioning enough for me to seek treatment, I'd say. But yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good then.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And then tell me more about, so when you were young, you wanted to be an author or something artsy. Did your parents sort of have any kind of input?
Their mindset, because my dad did higher education, was go to uni first, always. But they were really, really supportive of my job or anything I picked, which is, I think,
actually really nice.
quite uncommon for a lot of like...
But your parents are very religious at the same time, so I would expect that they would be like
more
like,
conservative?
more like hands off, like, as long as Thanh is happy, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Rather than like...
there's definitely a mix, I would say.
Okay.
But I think their thing was like, they really just let me have any choice I wanted. Actually, clearly remembering on that, how come Asian kids, like when they're born, they have like this cultural thing where it's like, they put like a book, a pen.
I love it. Yeah.
I do remember my mum said I picked up a pen in a book.
Oh.
For sure. And then, no, she said that as like, oh, I knew you were always meant to like, do something like, with your brain.
Writing.
Or something like that.
So
Something
she
like
framed
that.
it. Yeah.
Or something like that. But as in like reading or something. But they were pretty supportive because they knew that I had like active imagination. But they did want me to check higher education anyway. And I think they know that like when you grow up, other things, because like you might want to be a paleontologist just because you like dinosaurs, but it's a lot more than just like liking dinosaurs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then I'd say like definitely by high school, like it was properly fleshed out. But I still draw now. Like it's still a hobby of mine. I like.
Yeah, you're actually really good at drawing, and you
Thank
draw
you.
the cutest cartoons.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Like
Lucky tutor students.
No, it is really helpful in speech, and I'm really glad to have that creative side for myself. It's really helpful in
So
many
good with, like, kids as
situations.
well.
Yeah, but the author thing, technically speaking,
There's
I
an
am
unwritten
published.
book. Oh, hello.
Only because I won a writing competition in high school, and they published that book in a short story things. It's not that serious, but I do remember my English teacher was really proud. So she went up to the front of the school and was like, "Oh, Tan's a published author in grade 9. What are you guys doing?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's like
a bit of a brag.
it's a 500 word like 500 word passage. It's not crazy.
Wow. So we all need to
yeah.
know the name of this passage.
It's been a long time, but
Oh, sorry, we're doing a filming thing that we've already pre-spoken to about.
Okay, so Dave knows about it?
Yeah, they know about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
That
Back
okay?
to the podcast.
That okay? It's all okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm not going to edit that.
Yeah. Okay. I would say I think it's kind of weird because I think I still think in a really logical sense. It's not that creative,
Yeah.
but the way that I approach the narratives is why I tutor English in the sense that I look at it in a more math perspective than I do creative perspective.
Yeah.
Like even for the short story, like this doesn't matter. It's like I did it in grade 9, but essentially I read another passage online or something, and then I was like, this story is really cool. And then honestly, in my head, that story is not that different from the one I read. Like it's quite similar, but because I wrote it in my own words or like changed it accurate, like in a way that's acceptable, it looks like my own work, if that makes sense. For me, I still think it's like heavily inspired, but otherwise it looks really unique, if that makes sense. Like in fact, I'm pretty sure, I don't think I've read a single book the full way through. Not a single book. I normally it's too, my attention span is too minimal. Yeah. But for example, video games, I'm really interested in the lore of a lot of them, and they have really great short story writers. Nowadays, it's really hard to make a living, I think, as an author sometimes because of the oversaturation and then also. But then a lot of creative directors or people like that go towards video games and stuff, and they create some really great stories and and it has to be compact. I definitely prefer short stories because the lack of world building means you need to really think harder. It's like a puzzle about how you want to communicate your message. I think that's way
more of a challenge.
Yeah. But then in that sense, for example, when I tutor English, it's normally most of my students get success with it because it's I break it down to the tiniest, isn't I ask them to read a line, why exactly did they put this line in? And we do that for every individual line in the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As in, it's not I want them to know why it's there, not just because, which is a lot of the explanation of English is just because.
Yeah.
So
Fill the word count.
Yeah, definitely. That's why my English is my highest workload for tutoring is because I think a lot of people struggle because it's just so conceptual.
Yeah, it is. It's hard to sort of explain to people how to write a good story.
Yeah, definitely. Producing ideas as well is also as hard as breaking down or analyzing. So yeah, but I try to make it as methodical as possible, and then hopefully that makes enough sense, I guess.
Yeah, but that's so awesome that you are so creative but so logical.
I think
which is such a rare mix because other people are just super.
No, yeah,
artistic
definitely one or the other.
Yeah, one or the other.
Yeah, I do get that.
Blessed. Something to thank your parents for. Hello.
Sure.
Yeah, sounds good. And then tell me about, so when you were choosing about what you wanted to do at university, what was floating through your mind?
I got OP1, so I wanted to do med.
Whoa.
It's obviously that. It's really easily that.
What about law, excuse you?
Before
Words,
that,
writing,
before that, I was going to do maybe, I don't know, math or something, some really random stuff. Maybe engineering because my brother was doing it too. But then I got OP1 and I was like, okay, going for...
Because you don't want to waste it?
Don't want to waste it, yeah.
I hate it. It's such a burden sometimes.
Definitely at the time, I was like, I really don't want... Because I did work really hard for my OP1, so I didn't want to waste it. Especially because we did QCS, and my school was
Yeah, they didn't help you.
OP1, OP4.
Yeah.
There was no one in between that.
Were you the only OP1?
Only OP1, yeah.
Oh my gosh, you're a genius, Thanh.
No, but I know that it's not... a lot of people can get OP1, it's not so amazing. But I do know that... Raymond?
Yeah.
We did get the same ATAR, which I was pretty happy with because coming from grammar where you do get your grades boosted, and then my school where I was pretty, at the time, I think I was quite proud. But irregardless, I didn't want to waste it. But then I had to do, because I didn't do UMAT, I had to do biomed, which is OP7.
You weren't deciding to do...
Yeah, I wasn't really sure. So I went to do biomed, which is OP7.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in the end, OP1 still didn't go to waste because the amount of money I've made from tutoring is crazy.
So did you like
It's crazy.
plug that on your
I didn't have to. My parents definitely did that, but in the
that's so
Viet
good.
community and in my area,
Yeah.
like it's
It's
like
obvious.
a monopoly.
Oh,
Pretty much. Like
That is so
definitely
good.
at the time, and I would say definitely the feeling of hard work into success,
Yeah.
like of getting an achievement, definitely invaluable.
Yeah.
Super invaluable. Yeah. Like I know I wasn't actually that amazing as a student. I was like getting like I think B's and C's
Yeah.
from grade 9 and 10. But I know in NAPLAN I did quite well. So like that's the core skills, right?
Yeah.
But then in grade 10, I accidentally topped my grade. So as in
Accidentally.
I got second
Most
in everything.
humble. Wow.
So then I topped. But then the feeling of winning once,
Yeah.
I think if not that was probably my turning point for being a high achiever. I wasn't a high achiever before then, but
Yeah.
winning once in grade 10, I like
Yeah.
in a
This
talk,
feels
but to be
so
fair,
good.
probably a bit toxic. Like
Yeah.
how definitely first year, myself in first year,
Yeah.
a horrible person to talk to academically.
Oh.
Should not talk to me. Definitely like, hey, what grades did you get? Like, oh, really? I got a 7. Like that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Definitely
yeah.
shouldn't talk to me in first year. But from grade
That's when
10,
I met you in first year.
yeah. Yeah, grade 10, definitely my academic turning point, for real. Like, I think I just got addicted to, like, victory,
Yeah.
I'd say.
And did you like study like 10 times harder or like was
Definitely.
it just
I, like, studied every day. Like, I was at school till, like, 5 every day. But, see, I say this, but hearing from state high kids is quite common. But it's more like, I think, which I am speaking about myself in this sense.
Yeah.
But that I think I respect, now that I look back at it, is like, in an environment like a private school or a selective school where the academic culture is greater,
Yeah.
like everyone's expected to do well and everyone pushes each other.
Yeah.
Being alone in that situation, I'm
Yeah.
proud that I was able to identify that
Yeah,
myself.
that's so amazing.
Yeah, because like no one, like everyone would be like, oh, you're studying so much. Like, why are you studying so much?
Yeah, and
Doesn't
especially
matter.
when it's like not the norm.
Yeah,
So you
yeah,
have to go against the norm,
definitely.
which takes a lot of
Yeah.
like discipline, which
Yeah,
you learn
discipline,
growing
yeah,
on a
from
farm
picking
and
chilies.
from parents. Yeah,
Yeah.
nah, but obviously, yeah, the victory, the success.
Yeah, definitely like pushes me. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And then, so tell me about going to uni and coming to like UQ and stuff. Sort of, little farm boy meets city-ish almost life, but not quite.
Definitely first year was a experience of like like social reset. Like definitely very poor social skills first year. But second year definitely developed like much better. Like it got better. And then I don't know, but lately like I'm pretty comfortable. Like
You're so
I definitely
popular now, Tan. Yeah. Hello.
but I do enjoy working with people as well, which is why I want to do allied health
Yeah.
as my degree. And yeah, I suppose like definitely, yeah, doing biomed, getting like, it was just like school part 2 essentially.
Yeah.
But speech path is definitely more like, I feel like I'm working towards my job. Like as in I'm building these skills so I can be a better speech pathologist. Less so that I'm just studying to do an exam, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like actually I do really, really respect the way UQ runs speech path. I think it's really good. Like compared to biomed where it's high school,
Yeah.
part 2 is like,
Yeah.
study for this to do this test. But to be fair though, I think the mindset of most people going into biomed isn't to do something in biomed, but to do medicine. So that's obviously, maybe that's why it's like that. The speech path is very like, they make you do placements really early on, clinic really early on.
Yeah.
Like
Very hands-on.
it's definitely very, very intensive, but you really develop both things at the same time. Like I can 100% feel like me last year does not have the clinical skills of me this year. Whereas in biomed, first year to second year like, oh man, I forgot all that first year stuff.
Yeah,
Like
I get you.
it's really different. But UQ, I think the speech path program is really good.
Oh wow.
I know it is actually world renowned, I'm pretty sure.
Really?
So that's why a lot of overseas students come to do speech path here. I know as well.
Yeah.
Like my cohort, the master's cohort, is I think 50% international. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, and tell me about that transition from biomed into speech path, and what do you love about speech path, or was it just kind of like a random?
In biomed, I definitely because I was kind of thinking about it, I did sociology as my last thing, and in that I learned a lot about the allied health role, I guess, and how it's more people focused, like therapy, as in focusing on the end result less so than putting them in a position where they might be fine. If that makes
Yeah.
sense. Where it's like because I know even my med friends now, when they get to like therapy or a bit deeper into their topic, it says refer to physio, refer to speech, refer to OT.
Yeah.
It's not super about like, but whereas speech and stuff is more like, oh, how do we get them to a place where they are fully or like in a comfortable level of functioning, less so than I think they'll be fine from here.
Yeah.
Like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I also did musculoskeletal anatomy and neuroanatomy, and I definitely preferred neuroanatomy. So in that sense, I really like the idea of speech, where it is more like neurologically focused as well. And I have always also enjoyed like languages, communication, everything. Honestly, speech is very I'm quite lucky to have it. Like I would say at the start, when I was young, I wanted to be author, creative, whatever. I think in high school, I wanted to be a translator. Now I remember. Interpreter. Because I really liked learning different languages and interpreting. And then by uni, in biomed, I discovered I like working in kind of like a healthcare field. Like as in some kind of biomedical or like I guess health related. And then I was lucky that when I graduated from biomed, I had speech, which is the combination of all these things. Right, yeah. And like it's got like an education aspect, a healthcare aspect, and a language aspect as well. So I thought that was like, I was really lucky to have it at the end. And my mum, when I wanted to do med, she was like, she felt like it didn't suit me, but when I wanted to do speech path, she said, for her, it just really felt, as someone who's seen me grow up, she felt it was really like in line.
Oh, that's so
with
beautiful. Connecting all the dots when
Yeah,
you're looking back.
I was really, I think having speech, I'm very, very lucky. Because I know a lot of people, when they graduate or when some people don't ever reach a point where they really find what they want to do. But then, especially with my perspective of work, where I'm like, I want to do what I like till I die. I'm very lucky to have something that suits me so well. So, at least from my standpoint, I'd say so.
Yeah, that's cool. So sell us Speech Path. What do you love about it, and how are the clinicals?
It's good. The clinic, it's definitely tough. I'm a high achiever in biomed, but not in speech path.
Oh.
Like in the sense that the priorities are really different. Like in biomed, when you talk about concepts like ethical concepts or more like how to treat patients, it's really one offline that you can skip, honestly. But in speech, they say stuff like give 10 good ways to treat families or something like that. And then from when I first entered, and the way I studied for exams was not the way that you study for speech. Like I ignored really important information, and that kind of does show like the mindset of biomed, where it's like the stuff you don't look at and the stuff you do. I always focused on like all these pathways, mechanisms, or like the really concrete technical stuff. But then in speech, not at all. There are so many conceptual questions like how would you explain, like, or literally how would you explain this to a family, or like how would you do this and this. And I think it's very, very functional. Like there's nothing that I can see on an exam that I'd say, why am I learning this? Like it's all really useful, I would say. Like the mindset's just totally different. But like I think and it's it's also like working with disabled people as well. Communication, swallowing, all these kinds of areas. I think it's really interesting. Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. And tell me more about the clinicals. So what kind of different settings have you sort of worked in, and are there any sort of like special cases that you sort of remember? I'm
in my first year of a 2.5 year degree. So I've only done 2 clinics. One of them was a pediatric clinic at UQ, and another one was a telehealth clinic. I think legally I'm not allowed to say much about the names, but I think I can say a bit about my experience. But it was good because I really got shocked to my core. It was like, for me, I equated this to practicals in biomed, in which it's quite like pass-fail. And clinic is technically pass-fail, but clinic is also working with real people. You really shouldn't think of it in a way that's pass-fail. And then, in my first sem, I've never failed anything in my life, but I nearly failed the pass-fail. Actually, technically speaking, I'm pretty sure I did. But the course coordinator saw that I shouldn't have failed, and they let me pass. But, and I know like me and my CE had our differences, our clinical educator had our differences. But definitely. But that first clinic I found really valuable because, for example, like they give us notes about the client, and the client's notes prior to my therapy block was like, this kid is like a monster. Like this kid is like runs around, shouts, like throws stuff. He's
Yeah.
so disruptive. And then me and my partner, we were like, oh, this sounds really scary. But then when we went in, his parents came in, and he was all right. Like he wasn't anything crazy. He was just like a boy, like a little boy. And then his parents were like, oh, we hated the last two. Like we hated the last people. They were so not mean, but they were so not accepting of him.
Yeah.
They like didn't cater towards his needs. They just did. And then you can see that the view of like the notes versus the view of the parents is really different.
Yeah.
And I could tell that like the kid, like they were even saying like, oh, we might not come back depending on the therapy block, because it's just like last experience was so bad. We felt like nothing happened, and it was like 12 weeks of nothing. And then the progress was really little. But that therapy block, I was really happy because male speech pathologists are really uncommon.
Yeah, that's
and then for him, I think he really needed, like, I guess, kind of like, because his mum also said that he loves his dad a lot.
Yeah.
You know, he's very boyish.
Yeah.
And I think one of the key things my CE said was my benefit was knowing what little boys like.
Yeah.
Like knowing what little
You
kids
got
like.
it.
And it's like, it's surprising because like all the games all the therapy options that they provided for him last time were really stereotypical straight from the lectures. And that just didn't work for him, but they kept doing the same stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas when I came to my time, like we used Nerf guns or like stuff like that. And then for me, I think that's pretty, kids like Nerf guns.
Yeah.
But
Good choice.
I don't know how no one ever thought of using it before.
Yeah.
It's just so like, but I guess like they just didn't find it, they just didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
But it worked for him really well. And I think that's definitely my best experience with a client so far, because I felt like I definitely made an impact on that client, because he's one of those kids that I think your mindset to them is like they're very rowdy, they misbehave. And when they get stuff wrong, you think they're being cheeky, right? His mum was definitely like that. She was like, oh, he's just getting it wrong on purpose. Like he's trying to do that sometimes. But then for one time we were doing a formal assessment to test some of his abilities.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, can you point out the first and the last object or something like that?
Yeah.
And for the first object, he pointed to an object on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
Which is not, for us, our convention, the first is from left to right.
Yeah.
So we realized that he couldn't tell the left-right convention, which for us is something so basic, right? But finding that out for his mum was so crazy because, for example, when he's spelling words like the word no, N-O, he says on. He reads it backwards, right? And but for her, it's so obvious. She thinks he's being dumb. She thinks he's being stupid on
Alex,
purpose.
it's just so.
So for us, it's so core, right? And then for me, I think that was like, thank God we found that, because like otherwise, like in classrooms, there's so many things where it's like do this first or this last, or like read from left to right, or anything from there. It's such a core basic skill. But in saying that, that means we send them to an OT. We don't target that. That's for occupational therapists to deal with. But like, and that also goes to show that the last therapy block, they didn't look at him enough to even see that, which I think is really disappointing. Like it's such a core thing that he really needed for therapy. But I think that is one of those things where it's like, oh, real intervention. Even though I'm still a student, the impact definitely felt there. Like, because his mum started, I think, when she found out, it was like, all these things started to make sense. It was like, oh, that's why he does it like this. Like, because the thing is, like, when they get it wrong, like, they just get discouraged or they get nervous or they laugh. Like, they don't, there's not, like, the reaction isn't going to be natural if they get it wrong. You know what I mean? So then, and then they interpret it poorly, like, oh, why are you getting it wrong on purpose all the time? You know, stuff. But, like, those kinds of impacts, I guess, is feels good, naturally. It feels quite good. So,
That's cool. Yeah, and then tell me more about, like, what exactly does a speech pathologist do? Because that was kind of interesting. You were sort of testing him on, like, what is first and what is last. But I imagine, was the boy, like, probably having some issues with, like, communication kind of thing?
Yeah, he, I think I can't give too much incriminating information.
Yeah,
I think.
don't.
I don't really know, but
So,
we
but,
work with, like, speech difficulties, so speech language pathologists, but we also do swallowing. So speech, so anything regarding the movement of your mouth to make sound. Language in terms of, like, the processing. And swallowing
in terms of like understanding.
Understanding, expressive, receptive, like comprehension, and then like expressive language as well. And also swallowing, only because the muscles that we use for speech are the same ones that we use for swallowing. So we do swallowing as well. But it's like mainly those three areas. The caseload is, I'd say, a lot of pediatrics, because obviously kids, that's a really important time for development, but also in like adults as well, whether it be like, because with aged care, like dementia and stuff
Yeah.
like that, it can affect your motor function with your mouth, as well as swallowing is also really important for that kind of thing as well. So the caseload is very spread out, but compared to physio, but similar to OT, the pediatric market is very large because communication in that is very important. Like
Yeah.
for kids' development, like if they fall behind, they can just never catch up.
Yeah.
So it's really
Catch
like
them early kind of thing.
especially nowadays, speech pathologists in schools, like as almost like another teacher, is becoming very common. I think like if you want a job in there, it's really easy, but not that I would do that. But
Yeah.
it's a really common job opportunity now. But it's essentially just being like because my telehealth clinic that I did last sem, was doing that for over telehealth. But the content I taught wasn't really specific to speech path. It wasn't like, oh, make this sound or anything. It was pretty much like reteaching conjunctions, reteaching that. Like it's quite,
Mini
it
English
is
teacher.
primary school stuff.
Yeah.
But it's more like they're too behind that they can't keep up with class, so it's supplementary lessons to make them catch up. Like it's more like that. It's not like, oh, we have this secret set of techniques that we're not giving teachers. It's more like we're trying to catch them back up to speed so they can access the educational curriculum. Something like that.
That's cool. And you know, for your future, do you want to focus more on like working with kids or like older patients? Do you know?
Adults. For sure, adults. Kids are very like, at
Need
first, when I
gamification.
came in, I thought I'd be 0% kids, but kids are actually quite fine. And it's fun because in terms of problem solving skills, kids is actually, I think, more problem solving skills.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're trying to figure out a way that you can accommodate for them.
Yeah.
It's more of a challenge, I'd say. But definitely, with kids, you need to have high energy all the time. Like, a lot of them don't understand when they make gains or when they make progress, so you need to be very dramatic. Really dramatic, like, wow, like, great job. Like, but then sometimes there's days where you just don't, like, feel like
No
it.
energy, man.
And you can't give that to them. Yeah. So definitely in adults, for me as well, I think being able to reason with the patient is a thing I'd like to do.
That logical brain
like that would
coming
be definitely a lot nicer than the kids. Like, you just have to do it. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. But I know, like, but I actually don't mind peds. I thought I would dislike it,
Yeah.
but nowadays it's quite fun. Like, I do like it, but I've had a year and a half of peds. I think I'm going on placement soon. It'll be probably for adults, I'd say. I also work with kids as well as an allied health assistant, so I have fair share of pediatric caseload. I'm very prepared to work with adults now. Hopefully it's to my expectation. So, but either way is okay. If adults turns out to be too confronting or not that fun, then I'd be happy to do pediatrics still.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's cool. And so what exactly is sort of the career path for speech pathology? So you do 3 years bachelor and then 2 years masters, or and then-
So I did the master's program is more like it's an allied health bridge. So you don't need to. You could just do speech path from the start for 4 years.
Oh, it's 4
Like,
years.
so bachelor is the 4 years, but then master's is 2.5.
Yeah.
So they tend to have this master's program for any allied health, physio, occupational therapy, and speech path and audiology as a bridge. Like, once you finish your degree and you want to swap, it's like that. So it's not like
Compulsory.
it's not advanced. It's not like when I say masters of speech, a lot of people think,
Yeah.
whoa,
Oh,
speech
fair.
path, like speech path plus.
Yeah.
Like, no, not really. It's like the same thing. It's just faster because I have a degree already, and like I get paid slightly more.
Ooh,
Slightly more.
that's
As in,
good.
like, I'm one thing above, but it's very, very minimal. But it's like a bridging. I know a lot of people who were going to do med, and then they choose not to do it anymore. They swapped it because it's like an easy way to still do healthcare.
Yeah.
But no, not easy. It's
hard.
the master's program is pretty intense. Like, I did talk to some of my med friends, and my contact hours is actually more than their contact hours.
That's crazy.
Technically speaking. But that's because my clinic is also quite big, and that takes a big chunk of it as well.
Yeah, that's cool. And then so after, if you still do the masters, and then what kind of like, in terms of like careers, so you can choose one is like adults or kids, and what are the sort of other sort of different choices that you can make in terms of like, do you choose like aged care, you choose like the place you want to, or?
I'd say it really depends, but if it's a private clinic, it's probably kids. Because, but if you're doing adults, it's probably the hospital.
Yeah.
So it's like, and there's many different wards. You could do like a rehabilitation ward, so you're working rehab, or acute ward where you would be doing diagnosis. So you'd be like, oh, this person needs this help here. There's a lot of different, I guess, areas, but I know regarding adults and peds, if you're in one of them, you pretty much need to do everything in that area. So if you're in peds, you need to be able to do from, school age to infant. And then if you're doing adults, you need to be able to do motor speech, neurological, swallowing. You need to do all of it. But it's the separation is mainly like the caseload. And even then in hospital, it might be mixed too. You might see like pediatric patients too. But I think the bigger thing is like, acute and rehabilitation ward or something like that. Yeah. Like depending on the type of area. But, I guess in peds, if it's private, it's more like the caseload will be different. But you could also work in a school where it's more like literacy and stuff like that. So,
that's cool. And would it ever be like a 9 to 5, or would the hours be like very long, like stereotypical of like?
I'm not super sure about the hours, but I have talked to a few of my CEs about it, and their workload is pretty crazy. I know it is kind of like a 9 to 5 essentially. They don't do work when they're out, but at the job as a CE, like it's so crazy. Like we have like three people in our clinic, and each of us have 3 kids. Yeah. And the thing is, our CE can't just let us work without looking. Yeah. So that's technically for her, that's 3 new clients. But then she also has another session, so that's 3 others times 3, so it's 9, 6, so it's 18. On top of her own clients, which is like 12 or something. So
she must not sleep.
Like there's, but to be fair, and it's not amazing, I wouldn't say it's amazing, but we have an emphasis on having child-centered care, so really individualizing. But the reality with the workload is that it will tend to be we're trying to have client-centered care, where we focus on them, where you individualize something for them. But obviously, with the level of efficiency, it tends to be clinician-centered, where like you use this one test for everyone, like that kind of thing. Which, but
it's kind of normal.
It's to be expected, I'd say. But they do UQ really emphasizes a lot on like principles. We get tested on principles a lot, like. What should you what should you do to make sure that this is like the best way for care? Yeah. That kind of thing. So
that's cool. We're nearly at the end of the podcast. Okay. A few more quick questions. So Thanh, what do you think the meaning of life is?
I think for me, definitely, you can probably tell from something I've said, is like not servitude to others, but I think having a function is really important. Like for me, I normally only say this in a joke context, but I do kind of mean it. But having an impact or leaving an impact on others' existence, I think like verifies your own. Not to say you should not be your own person, but it's more like this is a really bad example. But there's a friend that I make jokes with a lot in the library. Not bullying, I think. But then, like we joke around and stuff, and then when I walk into the library and he sees me, he sighs. Yeah. It's like, and I'm like, it's like my existence has influenced him. Whether it be positively or negatively, it's influenced him. So that's why I definitely want to work in healthcare. Yeah. And like, I think I like that very social perspective, because I know a lot of people say stuff like, you shouldn't care about what other people think. Yeah. But to be honest, if you have to share the world with a lot of other people, if you want to not care about what other people think, you should probably live alone. Like, go live on an island or something. Yeah. Like, the reality is you have to, like be around a lot of other people in life and be part of society if you choose to be. So I think like giving social value, not like friend as in like social value, like that kind of thing, I think is important. Yeah. Otherwise, because the thing is, everyone, if you think of a relative sense, if you choose compared to like maybe an insect, then you'd be like an all-powerful being. But then if you choose into like, a galaxy, then we're nothing. So you really the only way you can get value is you compare yourself relative to people in your vicinity. That's the way I choose to see it, at least.
That's interesting. Cool. The next question is, so if you won the lottery tomorrow, what would you do differently about your life, if anything?
Buy less food. Probably. I spend a lot of money on food.
Buy less food? If you won the lottery?
If I won the lottery, I would then, because I would feel like I would just like leave it there and then just burn it all away on food. So then I would make a keynote like, now that I have a lot of money, it's good to like start saving it or something to make sure that to make sure I stay rich. Yeah. Or something.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say. I'm not that good with money, honestly. Really not that good with money. Yeah.
Sounds good. And the final question is, what is an ideal day in the life for you? It can be like study related, it can be speech path related, it can be anything related.
Probably go to work or something in a day, or like whatever ideal job I would have, and then at night would be like, or probably right after work, maybe take a break, some shape or form, eat or something, but then go out at the end for sure, definitely. Like having that, I really like the idea of having like a schedule, like or like a routine. I think is really enjoyable. Like waking up, doing something, and then when you're done, like something. And that is normally the way my day goes. Like I do live quite fast, so I make sure to put everything in one chunk, and then at the end I just like chill or something.
Yeah, cool. Sounds good. So we're at the end. Want to say bye? Bye.